Now, from the Pope John Paul II Cultural Center in Washington, D.C., Raymond Arroyo.
Great to see you. Welcome to the World Over Live. We have got a fantastic show for you this week. A former U.S. president and the former coach of the Mighty Ducks hockey team are with us tonight. At least that's what they played on screen. Actors Martin Sheen and Emilio Estevez are here to talk about their new film, The Way. It's a fascinating story about a father's journey to discover his son via a pilgrimage on the ancient way of St. James in Spain. And last week, we discussed the looming showdown between church and state involving absent conscience protections in the new health care law. Anthony Picarello, the General Secretary of the Bishops' Conference, and Deirdre McQuade of the Bishop's Pro-Life Secretariat have some new perspectives. And I know you'll want to ask a question or two, and we'll get to as many of them as possible. So give us a ring, 1-800-221-9460 in the U.S. and internationally 205-271-2980, or drop us an email, worldover@EWTN.com. Much to come, but first, here's the brief news from the world over this week. President Barack Obama's health care law is one step closer to a U.S. Supreme Court review. On Wednesday, both the Justice Department and the original 26 petitioning states filed separate and very different appeals to the High Court. The 11th Circuit Court of Appeals recently struck down the law's requirement that all Americans need to purchase health insurance. The Justice Department wants that ruling overturned. However, the states, along with the National Federation of Independent Business, are appealing the portion of the decision which allows the purchasing mandate to be severed from the rest of the health care law. They argue that Congress itself deemed the mandate essential to the Act's new insurance regulations, and thus the entire law should be struck down. More about the health care law and the U.S. Bishop's objection to yet another portion of that law later in the show. And a federal judge on Wednesday upheld some parts of an Alabama law designed to clamp down on illegal immigration while striking down other provisions. In a 115-page opinion, U.S. District Judge Sharon Blackburn upheld the state's right to require police to check the immigration status of people detained or arrested, and a public school requirement to check the immigration status of all its students. Blackburn temporarily blocked a section that made it illegal for undocumented residents to apply for a job, and another making it unlawful to willfully harbor or conceal aliens. That was the section of the law the Catholic bishops of Alabama and other religious groups sued over, arguing that it violated their religious freedom by making charity to undocumented aliens illegal in some cases. The judge said they had no legal standing and dismissed their case. Legal analysts now believe the Alabama decision could trigger a Supreme Court review of the law, since it differs from recent federal decisions in Georgia and Arizona. And Joseph Marachi, the terminally ill infant who earlier this year drew international attention when he was denied treatment under Canada's national health care system, died peacefully at home on Tuesday. He was 20 months old. Affectionately known as Baby Joseph, his Canadian doctors in March asked Joseph's father to consent to withdrawing the child's respirator due to his terminal condition. His parents instead asked that he be given a tracheotomy, allowing Joseph to breathe with assistance and spend his final days at home. His doctors refused and were backed by the hospital board and the decision of a Canadian court. Thereafter, his parents sought help from Priest for Life. That organization raised the money and organized the legal effort to enable baby Joseph to be transferred to a St. Louis hospital for the procedure. And in a landmark case, a British judge has refused to approve euthanizing a brain-damaged 52-year-old woman. The family of the woman, identified only as M, asked for the withdrawal of food and water, which could cause M's death, would cause her death. She has been in a condition that doctors describe as minimally conscious. M's mother and sister testified that she had said previously that she would not want to be kept alive or dependent upon others. However, the High Court judge, Justice Baker, said that such statements were informal and therefore not legally binding. He added that, quote, "the factor which does carry substantial weight is the preservation of life. Although not an absolute rule, the law regards the preservation of life as a fundamental principle," end quote. And the Vatican's top diplomat told the United Nations General Assembly that Christians are now the top target of persecution around the world. On Tuesday, Archbishop Dominique Mamberti said the lack of respect for religious freedom represents a threat to security and peace, adding that we're seeing an increase in intolerance for religious reasons. And unfortunately, Christians are the religious group which suffer the most persecution because of their faith. Archbishop Mamberti appealed for the protection of all religious minorities. 3 stories in the news this week seem to support Archbishop Mamberti's claim. In Indonesia, churches have been targeted in a series of attacks during the last several days. On Sunday, 27 were injured when a suicide bomb was detonated as faithful were leaving the Bethel Full Gospel Church in Solo City. The faith group is supported by and affiliated with California megachurch pastor Rick Warren. Since Sunday, bombs have been found outside 2 additional churches in Indonesia. Both were removed without incident. And in Iran, a Protestant minister sentenced to death in 2010 for apostasy has for the 4th time refused to renounce his Christian faith and revert to Islam in consecutive court hearings this week. The Supreme Court of Iran has ruled that Yosef Nadarkhani renounces Christianity and returns to Islam, or his death sentence would be declared null. U.S. Speaker of the House John Boehner spoke out against the sentence, saying this goes beyond the law to an issue of fundamental respect for human dignity. "I urge Iran's leaders," the Speaker said, "to abandon this dark path, spare Nadarkhani's life, and grant him a full and unconditional release." With his latest refusals, Nadarkhani, a father of 2 and a husband, now faces execution, which could take place any day. And the Egyptian Federation of Human Rights is reporting that the minority Coptic Christian community there is fleeing in droves. According to the report, since the start of the country's populist revolution earlier this year, 93,000 Copts have emigrated out of Egypt. And the group expects that number to reach as many as 250,000 by the end of the year. Blame is being placed on hardline Salafi groups seeking to apply Islamic law, the ban on Copts assuming senior government positions, and the recent attacks on Coptic churches, as well as the government's failure to arrest and prosecute attackers. And the Vatican has dismissed a report that Pope Benedict XVI is considering resigning the papacy in 2012. Catholic journalist Antonio Socci wrote in an Italian newspaper Sunday that the Pope could possibly step down when he turns 85 next April. He did not cite a source or a reason. In response, Vatican spokesman Father Lombardi said the Pope displayed great energy during his trip to Germany, which included a demanding schedule over 4 days, and that the stamina the Pope displayed speaks to his ability to take on new commitments. In his book, Light of the World, Pope Benedict earlier this year said, the Pope has a right and duty to resign if he feels he lacks the spiritual and psychological strength to carry out his office. He added that he wouldn't hesitate to do so if that were the case with him. And finally, Archbishop Philip Hannon, the beloved former head of the New Orleans Archdiocese, died early Thursday morning. He was 98. As a chaplain for the 82nd Airborne, the Jumpin' Padre, as he became known, parachuted into Europe, ministering to the troops at the Battle of the Bulge. He was on hand at the end of the war as well, as American forces liberated one of the first Nazi concentration camps. As an auxiliary bishop of Washington, D.C., in the 1950s, he became a friend, confidant, and discreet advisor to John F. Kennedy. Jacqueline Kennedy would later ask Bishop Hannon to deliver the Requiem Mass homily. He stood beside her at the president's Arlington burial. While a U.S. delegate to Vatican II, Hannon received the call to serve as Archbishop of New Orleans in 1965 And just 2 weeks earlier, the city had been slammed by Hurricane Betsy, not unlike Katrina some 40 years later. New Orleans was flooded and devastated, but Hannon at that time became a larger-than-life spiritual leader, and that would continue in the days to come, long after his retirement. He was a fearless defender of the right to life and launched his own Catholic television station in his diocese. He appeared many times on this program. Here's a lighter moment when he told us what he was doing in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina at the spry age of 92. Listen.
We have, of course, a great deal of money invested there, and I wanted to make absolutely sure that none of the looters would get in. So I went there myself, and the building itself was extremely strong. And of course, I didn't have any place to sleep except the floor. It was hot as a dickens. There's no water, there is no electricity and nothing. But I had some crackers, and I had some drinking water, and that was it. So as far as I'm concerned, I've lived through worse days than that. It was no trouble at all, as far as I'm concerned.
Archbishop, you're 92 years old. I mean, I can't imagine. You went alone? There was no one with you?
Sure. Oh, well, why not?
Oh, I know. Well, look, you're worth about 8 or 10 men. I know you.
I can say that, but anyway, there was only one person who finally banged in the door and came in, and I yelled at him. I said, "Who's there?" And he said, "Oh, Archbishop." So I knew that wasn't a looter.
Okay. He was one of a kind, a great churchman, and I know he confirmed me. May Archbishop Hannon rest in peace. When we return, Martin Sheen and Emilio Estevez are here to talk about their new film, The Way, their careers, their faith and family, and of course, we'll take your calls. The World Over Live continues in a moment. Stay right there.
Now, once again, Raymond Arroyo.
Welcome back to The World Over Live. My first guests tonight are not only renowned actors, but also father and son. The father has been a star of stage and screen for nearly 50 years. He appeared in such films as Badlands, Apocalypse Now, The Departed. For 7 seasons, he played the U.S. President Josiah Bartlet on The West Wing. His son is an acclaimed actor, director, and screenwriter with such credits as The Breakfast Club, St. Elmo's Fire, The Mighty Ducks, my kids love it, and his acclaimed film, Bobby. They're here tonight to talk about their latest project, a labor of love about faith and family and community. About to hit theaters on October 7th, the new film, The Way. Would you welcome Martin Sheen and Emilio Estevez? Gentlemen, thanks for being here. You don't have to reach over. Thank you. Now, let's talk for a moment. This film, it is such a beautiful, it's almost a meditation. It has so many layers. Emilio, you not only star in this film, you have a cameo, a really important one, but you wrote and directed it. Yes. What drew you to this Camino de Santiago, this path of St. James, this 1,000-year-old pilgrimage?
It would be this guy sitting to my left. He inspired me to write this after visiting the Camino in 2003. He had wanted to do the Camino for a long time. You know, my grandfather, his father, was born in a village about 80 kilometers from Santiago de Compostela. So he grew up knowing quite a bit about it.
Francisco, but he moved to the United States, right?
Well, he started his pilgrimage in Vigo, and he took a boat to Havana. That was his first stop, yeah. And in those days, it was easier to get to the New World than it was to Madrid, because Galicia was so isolated and a rugged mountain region.
Oh, and the film is beautiful because it takes you on this entire journey. Now, we should tell people, if you're a little confused and don't realize, Martin Sheen is not his real name.
It's not?
No, it isn't. Oh. I'm here to break the news. Ramon Gerardo Antonio Estevez.
Estevez.
Now, why did you change it to Martin Sheen?
I didn't. It's still Ramon, you know, and
some of your friends I know still call you.
Very few, but they do.
Your family still calls you.
My family, yes, they do, yeah. But when I was a boy, I started out in New York in 1959, and at that time, the Puerto Rican community was taking a lot of the blame for whatever went wrong in New York City at the time, let alone they were, in fact, citizens of the United States, but they were prejudiced against, and I felt the the pressure of that. And I thought, well, okay, they keep saying that I look Irish, all right, so I invented Martin Sheen. I took Martin from Robert Dale Martin, who was the casting director at CBS at the time, and Bishop Fulton J. Sheen. Wow. And I thought, I'll put the two of them together, let's see what happens.
Did you watch Fulton Sheen?
Oh, yeah, yeah. He, when I was growing up, he was the first real televangelist.
Yeah, he was beating Uncle Milty in the ratings, as I recall.
Absolutely.
We still air him here on EWTN.
You do, really?
Yeah, so people can see it. But Emilio, when you look at this film, I've read a number of interviews, and you say you wanted to show, create a character that was very different from your father.
That's right.
Who really inspired the film. Right. Tell me, what do we see of Ramon that we haven't seen before?
Well, you've spent now, what, a few minutes with him, and you know that he's very gregarious, he's very friendly. He never met a stranger. And he likes to jump into a crowd and shake everybody's hand. How you doing? Good to see you. And he likes to take pictures with everyone. And he wants to make sure they got the picture. So it's like, did you get it? Let's get another one just for safety.
He's just looking for his best side.
And so as a director, I'm watching him jump into crowds, and I'm thinking, well, we need to get this shot, and it's never going to happen unless we get him out of this crowd. So I had to keep reminding him that he was a curmudgeon. That he was not the character. That he was not a very likable guy. That he will evolve throughout the course of the film. There will be an evolution of this character, but he can't start out being everybody's friend.
And this is a character, Tom, who is a ophthalmologist from California who loses his son. The son has gone ahead and decided he's going to explore the world. He goes on this ancient pilgrimage path and dies. And the father goes to collect his remains. This is a scene of that moment. I want to share this with the audience. We'll come back and talk about it. Take a look.
What happened?
It was an accident. The weather in the Pyrenees is famous for being unpredictable, and I'm sure Daniel would have been warned by the locals. You are not close with him?
Not since his mother died, I'm sorry to say. What was he doing out there?
He was on pilgrimage on the Camino, walking the road to Santiago de Compostela. People from very different backgrounds, faith, and generations have walked the path from here in the French Pyrenees to Santiago de Compostela. 800 kilometers on the northwestern coast of Spain for over 1,000 years. We believers are told that the remains of St. James, the apostle of Jesus, are interned there. And so we make pilgrimage. This is what your son Daniel was doing.
Why was he alone?
And we soon find out. I mean, he really rediscovers his son. Now, there's a line in the film, Emilio, nobody walks this road by accident. Why did you walk this road and take your father with you?
Well, I was inspired, as I said, by my father, but initially by my son, who went to Spain with my father in 2003. He was working as his assistant on the West Wing. And so they went over to experience the Camino, but they had a very short period of time to do this, 2 weeks. And if you know the Camino, you really need about 6 weeks to complete the journey. So the first town that they arrived in was a town called Burgos. And they went to a pilgrim's albergue, like a bed and breakfast. And they sat for the pilgrim supper. And a beautiful girl walked in who was the innkeeper's daughter. She took a look at my son, he looked at her, and they're married. And they've been together now for about 8.5 years.
So wait, in the movie, he loses a son, but in fact, you lost a son on the
That's
Camino.
the point. That is, you got it.
Yeah. But not in the same way. There's a happy
it
loss.
was tragic in the film, but for me, I started to say, well, if I'm going to make a film on the Camino, it has to be personal. It has to be something that I know something about. And to your point, yes, I lost a son on the Camino, and so that was the beginning of our collaboration, writing this thing together.
Her name is Julia.
And the film, what I love about it is, and I want to get into these textures as we go on. You not only have a sense of the respect and love you have for this part of the world. The faith surges through the film. The other part of it is there's obviously a familial connection here and the deep roots. I noticed it was dedicated to your father, to Francisco.
That was his choice, and I was stunned, when I saw the first screening, and that appeared before the credits, frankly, I broke into tears. I had no idea he was going to do that.
Now, Tom in the film, the character you play, is a lapsed Catholic.
Yeah.
You are not. You are a practicing Catholic.
Until I get it right, I'll keep practicing.
You're going to keep practicing. You and me both. I like that. Tell me about tell me about that rediscovery of your faith. I know Terry Malick, whom I've met a few times.
Really?
He's an amazing man. He's not Catholic, though. Terry's Episcopalian, but deeply spiritual.
Very much so, yeah.
He was part of, you were, I know, in a really bad place. You were drinking a lot. At one point, you described yourself as a drunken, raging monster during that period, during the Apocalypse Now period. And then you come across Terry, who was your director in Badlands, and he gave you a book?
Well, he gave me several of them, but before that, I had begun a journey that culminated with Terry being, for lack of another term, a spiritual director in 1981. But after Apocalypse, I went through a period of questioning, you know, who am I, why am I here, what's this all about? And I was determined to find a way to unite the will of the Spirit to the work of the flesh, to lead an honest life. And it took me to a lot of different places inside myself and outside myself. In fact, Emilio and I went to India together. When
you were doing Gandhi.
Gandhi, yeah. And you know, Emilio he was 18 and he just fell in love with India, and he'd dive into the crowds and come home with his shorts and a few rupees in his socks, you know. And he'd keep telling me, you got to go out there, it's something extraordinary happening. But I was terrified of the crowds were not crowds to me, they were mobs, you know. And gradually he encouraged me, and I would go out into these extraordinary crowds, and I experienced this transcendent feeling of humanity, you know, all over. And I think we had similar experiences.
We did,
It was just, it just spun, coming out of the West, it just spins your head around, you know. So I was looking for something, and I had to go to Paris a few months later alone to do this film I'd promised to do, and I wasn't excited about it. So I went to Paris, and one day walking down the street, I ran into Terrence Malick. I hadn't seen him in years, and we reacquainted. He taught me Paris, and began to kind of lead me in the direction I needed to go. He would give me literature and to read, and I don't even recall the film I was doing at the time, because every waking moment I was with him. We were discussing spirituality, religiosity, so forth, and he'd give me literature, as I say. The final book he gave me was the Brothers Karamazov, and that did it. It took me about a week to finish it, and on May 1st...
You're a fast read.
No, I just couldn't put it down, you know. And on May 1st, 1981, I banged on the door of St. Joseph's Church on the Avenue Ocean, Paris. I used to stop in there occasionally. They were a missionary church. It was the only English-speaking church in all of Paris. I found out later in all of France, really. It was where a lot of Americans and Filipinos, people from the embassy would go there. And so that's where I was reconverted, But I came back to a different church. I had forgotten about Vatican II and what was going on, you know, so I was delighted with the changes. I didn't come back out of guilt or fear. I came back out of love and freedom, you know. I often said that Mother Teresa drove me back to Catholicism, but Daniel Berrigan keeps me there.
Keeps you there.
Because I was interested in the social justice aspect of service, and the church had opted for the poor.
You said something in an interview, and then I want to play a clip of the movie because it speaks to this whole conversation. Talking about your own addiction to alcohol, you said all addicts are looking for transcendence.
Yes, they're looking for...
What do you mean by that?
I think that people are looking, whether they're conscious or not, they're looking for a true transcendent experience. They're honestly trying to find themselves.
They're looking for the eternal, something larger than themselves.
Exactly. And how often have you heard someone say on drugs or alcohol that they've seen God? And I have not the slightest doubt that they have. But the problem is that apparition belongs to the substance. And the program will teach you that you can get there without the substance. You can own the reality of a transcendent experience.
Now, Emilio, all of this and the fullness of this is sort of wound and bound up in this film in subtle ways. I want to roll a little clip when Tom encounters a priest on the way, and then I'm going to talk about the Hollywood reception for this film. Roll it.
Hey, I'm Frank, New York.
Tom, California. Nice to meet you, Rabbi.
Oh, actually, I'm a priest.
You can understand my confusion.
Yeah, a lot of people make that mistake. Brain cancer. Surgery left me with a terrible scar. I wear this yarmulke to cover it up. They didn't get it all, you know. Cancer. Said it'll probably come back. Who knows about these kind of things? Only God. Anyway, they say that miracles happen out here on the Camino de Santiago.
You believe in miracles, Father?
I'm a priest. It's kind of my job. You a Catholic?
I don't practice anymore. You know, Mass at Christmas, Easter, that's about it.
Here, take this.
No, I can't take your
Oh,
rosary,
please,
Father.
take it. A lot of lapsed Catholics out here on the Camino, kid. Besides,
Thank you.
It's a sweet moment. And,
When
and
was
a
the
funny
last
moment.
time you saw a rosary glorified in a mainstream picture like that?
When
before?
was the time you saw a priest who's actually like a priest? Tough, funny,
Right.
wise, you
Right.
know, smack you across the head if you don't get it the first time.
Right.
Now,
And that's a true story, by the way.
Yeah.
really?
Yeah.
Did you
Yeah.
encounter someone like this? On,
My father did in Lourdes.
In Lourdes, yeah, years ago.
Really?
Yeah, we were waiting online for the holy water. My wife and I had stopped there on our way down to Cannes, and my wife's not Catholic, but she was just overwhelmed by Lourdes, and she insisted we stay overnight, and the next morning we were waiting online to get the holy water, and there was this guy pushing a lad in a wheelchair, and he was from New York. He had a very thick New York accent, and he was telling the boy, hey, you know them miracles, hey, you know, they don't just happen overnight. Sometimes they happen on the plane, you know what I'm saying, and sometimes it takes years. It's up to her. It's up to the Holy Mother. You got to have the faith. You know what I'm saying? And I said, Rabbi, excuse me, I'm over. He said, no, I ain't a rabbi. I'm a Catholic priest. I had a brain surgery, and I used the yarmulke to cover it up like that.
So he
It was
tells me
great.
the story
and you wrote
many,
it into
many
the
years
script.
ago, and I always remembered it, and I thought, well, this is a great story, and let's explore this on the Camino.
No, but this is a hard sell in Hollywood, Emilio. Look, we covered The Passion of the Christ in a lot of these films.
Sure.
It's often a slog, and you have to go it alone.
Yeah, that's what
That's
we did.
basically
That's
what
what
you're
we
doing
did.
here.
Yeah,
What
that's
was the reception like when you said, I want to do a piece about a pilgrimage
You
in Spain?
just watch their eyes glaze over, and you could see them taking notes and on their BlackBerries. Yeah, that's great. Kid. Well, really, they're Spain? I've never heard of it. But the Camino, never heard of it. Anyway, listen, we got an action film we want you to direct. Wow, really? You're kidding me. This film is really an expression of where my heart is. And Hollywood is a very difficult place to be earnest and to be heartfelt. And I am not interested in making films that are anything but. Really, they just don't speak to me. They're not the type of films that I want to go see. There's a lot of vulgarity in films. There's a lot of violence, casual sex, things that make me uncomfortable watching. And I'm not interested in perpetuating that message. I think we have a responsibility as artists. And if we live in that community, and we will work in that community, I think that we have a responsibility to lift it up. And to raise the bar and to reject that.
Well, what I love about this film is it is fully Catholic in that it is imbued with beauty. It has a sense, it has the highest artistic values, obviously. I mean, you're not here making a home movie.
Right.
And there's a deep humanity and a subtlety about it. This is not beat you over the head kind of stuff.
Right.
It's, you saw it in that clip. You get everything you need from a clip like that. The humanity of these characters emerge, the brokenness of these characters.
Right.
There's a line, and I want both of you to comment on this because I'll bet you're intertwined on this one too. A character says at one point, a Canadian woman, a bitter character, who Tom encounters on this way. She says, she's obviously suffering the after effects in guilt over having an abortion years ago. And she says, sometimes I hear her voice. I know it sounds crazy, but she talks to me. Why is that character there, Emilio?
Well, she's made this horrible choice, and she's living with the guilt of it. And she is in pieces. As you see, many people on the Camino are broken and battered, and they're in a place of such hopelessness. And she meets this gentleman who, you know, they have a very contentious,
combative relationship.
But she says to him, I'm hearing the voice of my child. And it's not bizarre to him because he's seeing his son. And in that moment, they have that not only a meeting of the mind, but a meeting of the heart.
Yeah, and the son keeps popping up in his consciousness at different points through the film. And it's, again, the choice of that. Stella Adler, whom I studied with, used to say, in your choice lies your talent.
Indeed.
And you see your talent in glaring relief in this film.
And we give voice to the unborn. And that is, again, another thing that Hollywood doesn't necessarily celebrate.
Now, Martin, you are known, and I've watched you for many years, not only on screen, on stage, and at protests. When I lived in New York, when I was at NYU, if there was a nuclear disarmament protest, a green protest, or an abortion protest, you were there.
With Dan Berrigan.
Yeah, well, but here's my point. I knew you were pro-life. I didn't realize until I began my research the personal connection here to your grandsons, to your wife. Could you share a little of that?
Well, my wife is not Catholic, but she's a mother and a grandmother. And, you know, at certain times along the way, the possibility of a new child would be coming into our life. And there wasn't always an easy choice. And we made sure that they knew, these young ladies, that they were most welcome. And we just did it. We understand what a child is, and we don't reject any possibility of a new life coming in. That's just who we are. I was a father at 21, and I was a grandfather at 42. You know, we didn't have a lot of marriages. We didn't have in-laws, we had outlaws. Nevertheless, we had all these wonderful children, and we adore them, and every single one is welcome, as welcome as the flowers.
And they've all been an extraordinary blessing.
That's beautiful. And I know friends of mine who know you better than I would often talk about how you and your wife embraced not only the lives in your family, but other lives as well, but how you went out of your way to make sure every life was welcome in your family. And that takes courage. And a lot of parents would say, you know, this is your problem. You go take care of this, kiddo.
Well, yeah, but we were young parents, and we struggled, and we were nourished in our adult life by the young presence of this guy, number one, that just changed our lives, changed the direction of our lives. And so we knew how important that was.
Now, this has been a pilgrimage for you two guys, because not only did you traverse Spain, how long did this film take to shoot? I know it took you, what, 5 years to put together, right?
About that in total to this day. Yeah, it's about 5 years. We prepped for 2 months, and then we were on the Camino for 40 days.
Wow.
But he was writing it for a period of a couple of years before then.
But this pilgrimage to promote The Way has been longer than shooting The Way. Oh, yeah. You have been in this bus since August. What has this been like? I mean, I can't imagine. I go on a 3-week book tour. I'm wanting to, you know, throw myself off a bridge. No, I can't imagine.
It's a deeply satisfying pilgrimage across the country with the reaction to the film. And we knew what we had, and we had to make sure that it got out there. There was no distributor or studio that could give it the love and the personal attention that we could. And so we took it out. We said, this is the only way to do it. This is our film. This is our chance. Let's take it out there. So we did. And, you know, all along the way, all the way from San Francisco to here, this is our 20th city.
Wow.
And last night we were at Virginia Tech. It was unbelievable, the reception, these young people. All along the road before then, at Notre Dame, in Chicago, in my hometown of Dayton, in Cleveland, in Boston, in Dallas, and Austin, and Denver. Everywhere we've gone, the reception has been deeply gratifying. And we just keep looking at each other and said, look, you know, let's keep going. We're on to something. And they get it. The audience, particularly young people, are getting it.
I want to pick up on that in a moment. I want to go to Jack. Jack's calling from New York. Very quickly, Jack, what's your question? Jack there? Hello, Jack. We got to leave Jack. We were talking about...
He was calling collect.
He was calling collect. You see, you got to keep those minutes up, Jack. He reached his limit on the cell phone. Emilio, we were talking a moment ago about how audiences are embracing this. Do you think younger audiences, family audiences, people in general, are just tapped out of the Transformers, over-the-top, glitzy, formulaic stuff, and they're ready for something simple and real?
I hope so. You know, a movie like The Help succeeds, and I think that's a message. The King's Speech, True Grit. These are movies that are about people, made for people. And someone once asked me, well, what's the demographic that this film plays to? And I said, well, I think it plays to human beings, right? So we've been playing all across the country, as Martin said, to a wide range of audiences. We thought we were making a film that would appeal to the AARP crowd. Which, you know, they had their convention in LA this past weekend, and they premiered the film there.
Oh, were you there, Mark?
Oh, yeah,
we
flew in for that.
And then we caught up with the bus in Atlanta.
That's right. And so, but it has really, it's speaking to a much wider demographic.
Jack is on the line now.
We got
I'm
him
told.
back.
Jack, you got your minutes back up? Go ahead, Jack, quickly.
Thank you. This is a compliment to the Sheen family about the movies you've done, but I'd like to also mention to Martin, I caught a program you did back in the early 70s called The Catholics, and then it went, I guess it was renamed The Conflict, and then I recently got a copy of your Fourth Wise Man program. How long have you been in the Christian mode? I know you've been there for most of your career, but I haven't caught many of your movies along this genre, and I just wondered if you could tell me if you've got a catalog someplace where I could check it out. I'm always impressed with the message you present and the way you present it.
The Martin Sheen Catholic Collection.
Oh, gosh. You know, I never really would categorize my work as Catholic or non-Catholic. I never focused on it that way, just that, you know, certain things came to me. As far as the Fourth Wise Man, that was Father Bud Kaiser, and that was very specific. You know, God rest him, Bud founded the Insight programs, and we would do these little half-hour shows.
And you did your first work for Father Kaiser.
We worked together.
Too, right?
That's right. The day I graduated from high school, I got a call from Father Bud, and he said, we'd like you to come down and audition for the show. We think you're perfect for it. And I went down and did just that and got the role.
That was it.
Yeah.
I saw him on the set. I thought he came to visit me. I said, no, I got a job.
The priests and the church have been tied up in both your careers. There was a Father Alfred back in your hometown in 1950. What was that, 1959?
59, yeah.
And he was the priest who gave you the money to go pursue your dream of acting in New York.
He did, yeah.
Why did he do that, in light of the fact that your father was not too keen on this pursuit?
Not at that time, no. Father Al was on his first assignment at Holy Trinity, where I went to school. He founded the teen club, and he was very, very encouraging to young people. At that time, you know, the 50s were very turbulent time, and we were going all different kinds of directions, and he was kind of a steady course for us, for all of us kids. And he knew my conflict with my father. I wanted to go to New York to pursue a career. My dad said, no, I must go to college. And Father Al kind of got in the middle and eased the journey for me with my dad, and he loaned me enough money to put together with what I had been saving, and said, "Go and follow your dream." He did, and I'm indebted to him.
Did you pay him back?
You know, I'm not sure if I ever did. I mean,
well, it's about time now. You can take your residual checks from the way and send it to Father Alfred.
Yeah, he's deceased now, God rest him. But yeah, he was my first sponsor.
Tell me, we heard in the bite that we played a little while ago, they were talking about the miracles that happened on the way. There were miracles, in your estimation, that happened during the shoot.
That's right.
Tell me some of them.
Well, you know, when David Alexander, our producer, and I were scouting for the first couple of months, we would be sitting in meetings with potential crew members, and they'd say, hey, you know, the north of Spain, it's going to rain every day, and you're never going to make this 40-day schedule. And, you know,
and at some points it did rain, right?
Yes, it rained twice. And we were shooting interior scenes both of those days. So we kind of looked at each other and said, okay, well, we'll you know, pay attention to this. But there were many miracles that happened along the way, and on a daily basis. And then the last one was getting into the cathedral. You know, we were denied access to the cathedral up until about 48 hours before we arrived. So I was rewriting the script. I had asked the crew, believers and non-believers, to light candles and to pray and to do whatever we could to get access to the cathedral. David was running around, you know, trying to access whatever church official that would allow us entrance. And finally, they said yes.
They had never allowed anyone to film.
No, they've never. I've never seen a film
newsreel
shot
footage
there.
only, and
docs,
documentaries.
and that was it.
Very limited.
No, and for people who don't know, there's that beautiful, that huge incenser that they swing, and that's central to the film. Really, the climax of the film. I won't ruin it for you, but it's a beautiful finish to the film there. Let's talk for a moment about, and I know. Let me go this caller, Debbie from New Jersey. Go ahead, Debbie. What's your question?
Oh, hey, Raymond. It's Deborah Rayho. How are you? I just wanted to say thank you for making this movie and producing it, and I am just so thrilled to hear all about it, and I would love to promote it. I think it's going to have an impact on so many souls. So thank you.
What can people do to promote it? Is there a website?
Yes, they can visit our website, which is www.theway-themovie.com. We also have a Facebook page. There's group sales that you can access on both of those sites. And you can take a group of people to see this film. And this is the sort of film that its success will depend on word of mouth. We know that people are enjoying the film. We've now screened it to probably over 30,000 people just on this bus tour.
Because you're doing a slow rollout. You're doing 14 cities initially, and then it will open wider.
That's right. October 7th we begin. October 14th we go wider, and then the 21st will be our widest release. It will be national, but it's going to require some effort to find out where those theaters are. And this is the sort of film that if you want to see more movies like this, the best way to send Hollywood a message is to vote with your wallets.
No, it's really important. People often curse the darkness and they forget to light the candles and put them higher up. You know, it's really important. There is central to this. Tom is when he takes his son's remains. The son is cremated, and he takes them to each spot along the Camino. Some are sending emails and they're saying, "Wait a minute, you know, the church doesn't like the idea of spreading the remains here and there," and that's true. What do you say to that?
Well, Tom is a non-practicing Catholic. He certainly isn't aware of canon law. That never occurred to him, you know. His act is one of love and gratitude and sharing his son's remains where he was last alive.
And it's an important device to move him along. I mean, just as a dramatic device, you need something to propel him down this way. And now, what did you all take away ultimately from the experience in our last minutes?
Well, we're very close. You know, it's so much so that I live 200 yards down the street from my parents. They're together now 50 years. I consider them my best friends. This production, I think, has brought us even closer together, if there could even be that. I mean, there's, you know, I have such admiration for this man, for his talent, for what he's gone through in his life, and he's been a great source of inspiration. And been some mighty big shoes to fill as well. So I hope to keep working with him.
Martin, what's your takeaway?
Well, I think that the film is a reflection of what it means to pilgrimage. You know, pilgrims start out with a heavy pack, and as they go along, they begin to disperse. They're looking for a lighter load. And then the transcendence begins to happen inside. They begin to unpack a lot of the negative stuff that they have stored in the dungeons of their hearts. They begin to be less judgmental, envious, less anger, less resentment, less all of the darkness that we have to contend with in our humanity. And by the end, they become themselves.
Very good.
So people are never the same when they start out.
Martin Sheen, Emilio Estevez. It is a beautiful film. The Way, it opens October 7th. Check your local listings or visit theway-themovie.com. It's worth your time. It's one of those movies that just lifts your spirits, and there are a few films with real soul. This one has it. When we return, Deirdre McQuade and Anthony Picarello from the U.S. Bishops' Conference are here to tell us about what the bishops are doing in response to the Health and Human Services mandate threatening conscience rights. The World Over Live continues in a moment. Stay right there. Thank you.
Now, once again, Raymond Arroyo.
Welcome back to The World Over Live. Conscience rights are in jeopardy in the new health care plan. There's a proposed Health and Human Services mandate that would force nearly all private health care plans to offer contraceptive and sterilization services. Tonight, we look at the issue from the viewpoint of the U.S. bishops, and we'll tell you how you can make your voice heard in the debate. I'm joined on set by Anthony Picarello. He is the General Counsel of the USCCB, and Deirdre McQuade, the Assistant Director of Policy and Communications for the USCCB's Secretariat of Pro-Life Activities. Would you welcome them both? Thanks for being here.
You're welcome.
And you don't have to reach over. I know it's a long stretch, Anthony. Let's talk about how this is being seen by HHS. They're looking upon these procedures, these techniques, and these contraceptives as preventive services for women. How is the sterilization of a man a preventive service for a woman?
Well, that's one of several oddities, to put it kindly, about the way they've gone about this. You have services for men being characterized as services for women, but worse than that, you have services that don't prevent disease being cast as preventive services, because essentially all the things under the preventive services mandate are sensible things related to getting ahead of diseases. Colonoscopies, blood pressure screening, diabetes, all that kind of stuff. That actually prevents disease. But, you know, kind of going back to the kindergarten adage, you know, one of these things is not like the other ones. Yeah. So then you throw in contraception, and what you're preventing is pregnancy, which is a healthy state.
So the child is a disease.
Exactly. You're preventing people. And that doesn't make sense just as a reasonable interpretation of the law.
Now, Deirdre, when the president's health care plan was in the debate stage, when it was being shaped, we were assured at every stage that conscience clauses would be intact. And right up to the very end, they said abortive and contraceptive services would not be funded in any way under this plan. There's even an executive order signed. What happened to that?
Well, what they promised was that abortion would not be funded in any way under this plan. What was left undefined were these preventive services, which we knew was going to be a concern. We knew we had further work to be done on this effectively unfinished health care reform plan act. So we knew that we would have this concern. The White House and this administration has said that they're committed to robust conscience rights. But here we are, HHS is basically we're faced with an unprecedented undermining of conscience protection. The protection that we're fighting for now is already in the law. It's already the law of the land, but this is unprecedented. This is rolling back existing conscience protection and opening up new areas where we've never had to worry about it before.
Anthony, when this was in the planning stages, we were very concerned about allowing so much authority to HHS to redefine, set rules, and set mandates after the fact, after the bill was passed. Why weren't the bishops more upfront, more concerned? And I know they were concerned. Why weren't they as engaged in this process early on? They were focused on abortion. It seems this was something that kind of slipped beyond the radar.
Well, the bishops did make statements that were focused on conscience, and even specifically mentioned the preventive services mandate as one that was problematic. Conscience problems and risks associated with the act were among the stated reasons why the bishops ultimately opposed the bill. So it was stated, it just wasn't necessarily heard.
Because the abortion issue was so large.
It appeared to predominate, and that was one of the things that, unfortunately, in some respects served as a distraction from some other very serious issues, including, for example, issues related to immigration. Those were also very prominent in what the bishops had to say, but folks were kind of fixating on the abortion piece. And of course, that is also a major, major issue, and it's foremost among them.
Now, what we're also looking at here, and what a lot of people I think are missing, and certainly we're not hearing any of it in the mainstream media, is the religious liberty component here of this healthcare debate. Give us your perspective of that. What are the major challenges you see, not only in these mandates, but coming down the road as part of this legislation?
Well, again, as you suggest, when you're dealing with a bill on this scale, what it tends to do is compel a lot of things. It has a lot of mandates, preventive services being just one. And when you require insurers, employers, and so forth to provide coverage that may include a lot of services that run against their religious convictions, and it's not just Catholics, it's people of other faiths, you need to make sure that there are accommodations for when it runs up against religious convictions in that way. The statute added no conscience protection to correspond to the new mandate. So in a sense, the preventive services problem is sort of the first out of the block, and we can probably expect to see more to come, which is one of the reasons why a legislative fix is probably the best way.
Well, this bill keeps coming at you. I mean, it seems everyone's reacting to this bill, including members of Congress. We had Jeff Fortenberry and Dan Lipinski, a Democratic and Republican congressman, here last week. They're co-sponsoring a bill that would fix this part of the legislation and create, do you think, a stable conscience clause if that bill's passed? Will that be the fix you're looking for here, Deirdre?
If the HHS preventive services go through, it will protect conscience in a variety of ways, that all the holes that need to be addressed with regard to health care reform. So it's more comprehensive, it includes this problem, and it's even broader.
And it's not only health providers, but also health consumers who might be concerned about this issue, right? Because people don't realize this isn't only Catholic hospitals, which is how I've heard it defined in recent days. This can affect people watching this show who own small businesses or people like myself, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, all the stakeholders in the process are affected by this. It's not just employers who sponsor plans. It's insurers who write insurance. And there are Catholic insurers out there who don't want to write policies that cover these illicit services and materials. So,
and they could be forced to.
Oh, they would be forced to. That's exactly what the mandate would provide.
Now, Anthony, given what we've just heard, given what we're seeing from HHS, and they're making these rules up and mandates as we go, looking at this, and let's assume that the Lipinski-Fortenberry bill doesn't make it out of the Senate. I've spoken to some people there that said, it's a very dicey proposition. But let's say it doesn't make it out of the Senate. Would the bishops support repealing the entire health care bill, as some in Congress would like?
I don't know, but I expect the answer is no. And that's because the bishops are generally concerned about making sure that there's health care for as many people as possible, for widening out coverage. So long as, and they wouldn't endorse any particular method for doing that, except that it's got to be within certain double yellow lines. And that includes things like protecting conscience. It includes things like not funding or in any way supporting abortion, facilitating abortion. And it requires justice for immigrants. And those were the three shortcomings that were identified before.
And those are the three shortcomings that remain in the bill, it seems to me, in the law. So, so that's, so I mean, but if they aren't fixed, what do you do with this thing? Well, I mean, and isn't the freedom of Catholic hospitals and their moral witness in the world jeopardized by the federal government imposing these values and conditions upon health care?
Well, certainly the witness is jeopardized. That's one of the key elements of this. I mean, just to take the example of Catholic universities, how can they possibly be communicating a message to their students that contraception is immoral, that abortion is immoral, if they are required to provide in their coverage contraceptives, including abortifacients? So it undermines the message directly.
Deirdre, what should people be doing now? I know there are a lot of people very concerned about this. I've been getting emails all week since we had the Congress people here last week. They're very confused about what steps they should take. Where should they go?
There are two steps that people can take. Catholics and our other friends alike who are concerned about the erosion of civil liberties. This really is fundamentally about our civil liberties. And I've had many friends on Facebook who are not particularly Catholic, but are with us on the life issues, who say, sign me up. I want to add my voice to the bishop's campaign in defense of conscience rights. The two things I would encourage people to do, one is more time sensitive than the other, is to visit the website that we've set up, which is the Bishops' Conference website, www.usccb.org/, that's the slash mark that goes up and to the right, conscience, spelled con-science, conscience. www.usccb.org/conscience. There we have two actions that people can take. One is to write to HHS before midnight tomorrow night.
On Friday September 30th.
For 11:59 Eastern Time. And if you click on our Take Action, it says click here. It'll bring up a screen where you can then send comments, the body of which is already pre-written for you. If I could read the body of that, I'd appreciate that.
Yeah, make it, it's a little long, but you want people to personalize this, you told me before the segment. So what do you do with it?
The body's already provided for you by our sister organization, the National Committee for Human Life Amendment, so don't be thrown off that it doesn't have USCCB on the top. But please personalize this message that starts off saying pregnancy is not a disease. I mean, I as a woman am particularly offended that HHS is treating pregnancy as a disease. And I've gone in and I've said, as a Catholic young woman of childbearing age, I'm particularly concerned about HHS. If you personalize your message, chances are our messages will be paid more attention to by HHS and later on by our elected officials. And you can add with a closing, and therefore I thank you for paying attention to our point of view. I know hundreds upon thousands, if not millions, of other people share my point of view. Sincerely, Deirdre McQuade. And then it will send you to the opportunity to write to Congress in support of the Respect for Rights of Conscience Act. That's
so it's
absolutely essential.
It's a double action.
It's a double action. So the first one needs to be done before midnight tomorrow night, and then you'll be invited to also write to your congresspersons in support of the much-needed act.
Yeah, it seems this conversation will continue on. We're seeing this week there's another HHS mandate that was buried in the bill. I guess no one read because it's so big and it's evolving, where HHS is now requiring, or would like to require, health insurance providers to send all of your personal and my personal patient information to the federal government, where it would be centralized. Do the bishops have a concern about this? I mean, it would seem this would violate subsidiarity, freedom of true freedom of choice, and conscience.
Yeah, I'd be reluctant to comment on that before seeing it, but it sounds problematic as a matter of just rights of privacy generally. That's a big concern. Sure.
Yeah, no, it's amazing how this thing is sort of evolving in its many ways, and I do think there's a lot of concern because in general, as the bishops stated, people like the idea of health care for everybody. How you get there is the challenge and the problem.
Exactly.
And, legislation is often ugly and the details are what you have to sift through. So thank goodness.
Laws and sausages. Right?
Yes, well, thank goodness there are people like you who are taking the time to sift through it and discover so much of this. Otherwise, we probably wouldn't be hearing about it at all. So, Deirdre McQuade, Anthony Picarello, thank you both for being here.
You're welcome.
You can, as you heard earlier, Deirdre directed you to the USCCB website, usccb.com .org, usccb.org/conscience is that page that Deirdre directed to you to earlier, and you should go there, make your voice heard. The Department of Health and Human Services is still hearing and having this listening period, so take advantage of it while you can. That's all the time we have. Remember, the Truth and Life audio Bible is still available through the EWTN Religious Catalog. It's the only Catholic dramatized audio Bible available anywhere. World-class actors Stacy Keach, Michael York, John Rhys Davies, and many more bring the Gospels to life as never before. Go to RaymondArroyo.com. I've got a link up top that sends you right to the catalog page. And as long as you're visiting, check out my Facebook and Twitter pages. They're linked through on the left-hand side. I'll also link the USCCB site in case you all have problems navigating that. You can find it on my Facebook and Twitter pages. Until next week, we'll be scouting the world over for all that is seen and unseen. Next week, don't miss the World Over 15th Anniversary Special. Can you believe that? When you see the comparative video, you will. Be sure to tune in. On behalf of the staff and crew of EWTN News, I'm Raymond Arroyo. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye now.